Hi there, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me in your church, and I just feel really honored that I could witness that baptism. I had tears, my own tears. I don't know the family, but I know what happened, and I'm so blessed that I could be here for that. And for me to use that language is even odd because for most of my life that was Christianese, and I was a news reporter, and I don't do Christianese, and I don't do Christian. I think I was living kind of a dual life. Part of it is on television glamour. And I made it to the top in television of, being there backstage at the Grammys and the Emmys and interviewing these stars and on the red carpet on Oscar night and interviewing these stars or anchoring and being in New York and sitting next to some of the biggest names in television news and covering stories all over. So that was the outside life. The inside life, and I think what kind of brought me to tears there was the little orphan girl. This service started with a praise song in which we were singing, He made the orphan into a son and daughter. I felt teary there too. I wasn't an orphan in that I didn't have a mom and dad. I did have a mom and dad, and I had siblings. There were 7 of us, but my parents were gone a lot. They were drinking, they were fighting, physically fighting, they were disappearing, they were gone a lot, and we were 7 kids trying to make it on our own. And it just doesn't do it justice to say that. One day when I was in about my 20s and I had started working at King, it dawned on me that the family life of the Kauffmans would have been a news story. If a reporter had come along and found 7 kids living on their own, that would have been a news story. I would have been there doing a live shot. These kids were in here with no lights. The electricity was shut off. The gas was shut off. The water was shut off. How did they make it? I had one thing happen when I was 4 years old. Let me just give you a picture. 7 kids. Oldest is a brother, then a sister, then me, then 3 younger sisters. And if there's no mom and dad to say, come in, you're going to be outside playing. So the older ones would be outside playing, and whoever was the next oldest would be watching the 3 kids. So it was my turn to be watching the 3 younger ones, and I was only 4 years old. And so you can imagine, it was a baby and a 2 and a 3 maybe, and there was nothing to eat. And there had been nothing to eat for a long time. And they're crying, I'm hungry, and and I go and I look around in the kitchen. Everybody's been in the kitchen. My mom, my sisters, my brother, everybody's been looking around. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to eat. They're calling, they're pulling the little kids hanging onto my leg. There's nothing to eat. I open the fridge and, for the 10th time, there's nothing to eat. But I find a little jar of jam that's empty, but there's some purple around the bottom, and I'm so excited, and I grab it, and I scoop it, and I put it in my mouth right when I hear baby starting to cry. And at the age of 4, I was overwhelmed with guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. Those were 2 words that jumped out at me as you were reading that scripture, Pastor, from Isaiah 54, that we will not know guilt and shame. Well, at 4 years old, it was like some giant thumbprint, put guilt and shame right here on my forehead. And so that was the underlying story. That's underneath the TV glamour story of becoming an anchor person at King 5 News and then going to CBS, or going to Good Morning America first, and then CBS News, flying all over the world, doing stories everywhere, and making it. But behind, I'm carrying around this guilt and shame of those hungry, hungry years. In the middle of the first praise song that we were singing, somebody stopped and read 23rd Psalm. That's also very special to me because when I was a little girl in that chaotic house, I had an aunt who visited and who would take care of us for a day or 2, and then she would be gone. And she represented to me safety, sustenance, nurturing, but she also was more than a sandwich to eat. She taught me the 23rd Psalm, and not only said it, she would say it, but she would say, repeat after me, Hattie. And it was the King James Version, so I would be repeating, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. And I'm a little 7-year-old learning this. I had no idea what it meant. I don't know what green pastures are. What does restoreth my soul? I don't understand any of that. But she would have me repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. Even though I didn't want to repeat the part about the valley. I don't want to go there. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And I didn't know who thou is, but I would repeat it and I would learn it, and I learned it at 7. At 15, I became an angry teenager, and I rejected it. I rejected everything that she had taught me, because now I'm mad, because now I get it, that all of the other of my classmates, they didn't have a family like this. They had a refrigerator with food in it. And so I got this like big old chip on my shoulder that I'm carrying around, and I'm angry, and I don't want to hear it, and how could she have even fed that to me about a God who cares? And so I became this self-willed person, and I'm going to make it on my own, and I really did. On the outside, I was there covering all these events. I was there doing live shots from this part. I was traveling the world. I was everywhere, and you would think I had made it. And one decade goes by, and another decade, and another decade. And suddenly I'm 52, and I'm now living in Brentwood in L.A. I have a team of correspondents. I cover all kinds of things. I'm on national television on a regular basis, and I fill in as an anchor. And you'd think I have the life. I'm driving a red Mercedes. But one day my husband of 17 years comes home and he says, I'm not committed to this marriage. I've never been committed to this marriage. I just settled for you. That sound you just made was what I felt. It was as if, this that I'm standing on wasn't solid. It was like the ground, it was like an earthquake. And it took my heart back to being 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, scared. Who's going to take care of me? Where am I going to get food to eat? What's going to happen next? Because when you're a child of alcoholics, it's not just about being poor. It's about chaos. It's like the ground isn't stable. You never can count on anything. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. And I was feeling that. Nothing makes sense. And it's not supposed to happen to Hattie because I made my career. I can do anything. But somehow at that moment, the glossy big life and the broken inner life of a orphan feeling person came together. And I was 52 and scared. And I lived in L.A. I don't think I knew a single believer. I knew lots of yoga, New Age, the universe, manifest. You're manifesting this, Hattie. And I got all kinds of bad advice. Someone said, go shopping, buy new clothes, go to a spa, make him pay, have an affair before you reconcile. I was getting all kinds of bad advice. But one woman said, Hattie, do you have a Bible? And I thought, I can come up with one. She said, well, get one and look up Isaiah 54, which was the scripture Pastor Harlan read. And in it, I found these words that jumped off the page at me. To the forsaken woman, let God be your husband. It was as if the words flew from the page. I didn't know what that meant growing up in that house. What is a husband? What is a stable husband? A provider, a protector? I didn't know what it meant. But I knew I wanted to read it again. And so the next night I read it again before going to bed. And then I read it again. And being a network news correspondent, I traveled all over America. And so I found, hey, there are Gideon's Bibles in these hotel rooms. And I'd look it up and I'd read it again in a different translation. And then I wanted to read all of Isaiah. And then I thought, I'm going to go back and I'm going to read all of Psalms. And then there was the 23rd Psalm that my aunt taught me. And little by little, I was starting to think, well, not only to think, but to feel the truth of these words. As a little girl, I didn't know what green pastures meant, but as a 52-year-old scared woman, who's going to take care of me? I understood what Aunt Teddy was saying. A green pasture, Hattie, means there's food growing there. You'll be okay. Still waters, Hattie, means it's not a stormy sea. It's still. You'll be safe. And so these words were starting to make sense. But I had ego, and I didn't want anybody at work to know that Hattie Kauffman, news correspondent, is reading the Bible. And I didn't want anybody to know I was writing down little tentative prayers. And I was still having just not quite going to go there. Until one day, and it was Oscar weekend 2007. I was to cover the Oscar parties, which was always my assignment. And that weekend, I'm in a hotel above the Kodak Theater. I'm there Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday I have to go cover the Oscars. Saturday morning I wake up after my Friday night stay there. I take a walk, I get something to eat, I come back. It's a suite. So I'm sitting over, it's got the bedroom, it's got the living room. I sit down on the love seat and I close my eyes and I'm relaxing and I take deep breaths. And I'm relaxing and I'm taking deep breaths and I'm just resting. And I felt the sensation of a hand touch the top of my head like this. The way she touched her daughter getting baptized. The way a loving parent touches a child. I felt this, and I opened my eyes to see whose hand was there, and it lifted. I was in the room all by myself, and I was mystified, but I wasn't freaked out. In fact, I wanted it to come back. So the next day, now it's Sunday morning, I wake up and I think I'm going to make that happen again. And I'm going to do everything I did the day before because I want that. So I take the same walk. I eat the same food. I come back at the same time. I sit on the same love seat on the same side. It's just about 10 o'clock. I close my eyes. I take the deep breaths. And I think I can just, do this. And nothing happened. And just as I was giving up, opening my eyes, I heard church bells ringing. I jump up, I walk over, look down, I'm on the 9th floor. I look down, there's, this by Hollywood and Highland, and I look down, there's the church. I can see a church. I see a parking lot. I see people going in, and all of a sudden I think, I want to go there. I don't know why I thought that. I hadn't gone to church in gazillion years. I don't know why I thought that, but I did, and I just threw on clothes and went down there and clip-clopped in with my high heels and sat in the back row, and it was, I was a little late, of course, because it had taken me a while to get down there. And I had no idea why I was there. I'm looking around. I'm barely hearing anything the pastor says. I'm kind of caught up in the music and the stained glass, and then all of a sudden it was over. And I'm mystified because I'm thinking, wait, I felt compelled to be here. It can't be over. I'm Hattie, I'm here. You can't be over. But it was over and people were leaving. I stood up and I noticed a few people were walking forward instead of leaving. So I followed them and I walked forward too. They stopped midway and I couldn't see. It was like a semicircle. I'm shorter than everybody, so I kind of come around to this side. And just as I come around, it's the pastor doing the bread and wine, the communion. And I don't know if I can. Is it allowed? But I did. I gulped. And again, nothing happened. There was no break in the clouds, no light shone down on me or anything. But I was expecting something. And then that crowd broke up and about 3 more, a tinier group came forward. And I followed them. And they got to the front and they kneeled down. So I kneeled down. And they put their elbows on the rail, and I put my elbows on the rail. They went like this, and I did this too. And so I'm doing everything they're doing. The pastor was coming along and praying in front of each person. When he got in front of me, he not only prayed, he reached his hand over, and he touched my head. The exact same side, warmth, pressure, as 24 hours earlier. And in that second, I was saved. I knew that was God the day before. It is confirmed here. It is rebirth. And I can't argue against palpable. It was palpable, and I'm not crazy. And it was confirmed right there. And I just kind of leapt up, and my life was different from that instant, from that moment. I kind of just flew out of that church. What's amazing to me is, remember earlier I told you about that gigantic thumbprint of shame and guilt that was on my forehead? It was as if that was gone. It took me a little while to realize all that this meant and would mean. As I said, I didn't know a believer. I had to find one. I had to find a church. I ended up in a small group, and they were studying. And I'm sitting there listening to them, and they're talking about what is the kingdom of God, and I'm thinking that's way in the future. And it's like, no, we are. We are? We are? I mean, it started my process of learning one thing after another, and it was as if I could look back on that childhood of growing up 7 kids with nothing to eat in the housing projects, where I had, prior to this, been an angry, that wasn't right, you didn't take care of us kind of perspective toward my parents. I realized I'd been looking back at my life as if I had dark glasses on, like everything was dark. And now I could see everything wasn't dark. God was there. We were taken care of. None of us died. None of us committed suicide. None of us were kidnapped, 7 kids alone. We were not split up and put into separate foster homes. We were carried. At the beginning of that Isaiah 54, there's another little part that can easily be skipped over, which says, "For you will forget the shame of your youth." So not only was this giant thumbprint on my forehead, like I'm a guilty, shamed person, but my past was somehow cleaned. And if my past is clean, then my present is clean. Isn't it? And then I had to learn that the future is different. You've been studying storyline, that we all are acting out our parts in God's big story. Suddenly it had to be about my part in God's story instead of my part on television, trying to become a big star and go to all these glamorous things. It was, how can I be humble, or how can I be of service? How can I do what you would have me do, Lord? And I learned pretty quickly that the way of the world is not the way of the Lord. That the things that they might expect of us to do in terms of, self-seeking or looking after how can I make the most, might not be what God has in mind. Pastor, I see that it's 10:02. Shall I wrap so we can have some question and answer, or shall I tell the little St. Ignatius story? Tell it? Okay. So I'm just going to fast forward now a few months. I'm saved. However, the divorce isn't over. And one day the lawyer says, Hattie, you know what? I've gotten a letter from opposing counsel, and they want to depose you. And a deposition? A deposition? And it terrified me. This is L.A. where people spend, I'm sure they do everywhere, but in L.A., like divorces and divorce lawyers and gazillions of money are spent on fighting each other. And I'm like, they're going to depose me? But wait a minute, I'm the victim here. He's leaving me. Why would, and as the lawyer pointed out, it probably had to do with the fact that you've been married 17 years and you're due alimony or parts of the business or whatever. And I'm like, this is not right. How could they? And she told me to just go take a vacation, Hattie. You're so stressed out. Relax. What had happened was I was trying to be in charge again, just like I used to be. Remember the me who thought I could call on God to show up at 10 o'clock today? So she told me to relax, and I went to Montana. I'm in LA, like, relax. Okay, I'm going to Montana. I flew to Montana. I went to a cabin in the forest. It's just me, a fireplace, a cabin. It's beautiful. It seems like somewhere you would go and relax. But because I was caught up in this self-righteousness, self-pity, indignation, how dare he? What do you think? I should try to get more. My mind is going, and I'm a nut. I can hardly sleep that first night. And the next day I get in my pickup truck and I just drive. And I don't even think about where I'm going. I'm just How dare he? You know, you're in Montana. There are pretty places. But I didn't even think about going to Flathead Lake or Glacier Park or anything. I'm just driving straight because I end up tired, getting low on gas, need to get something to eat. I pull over. I'm in a town that looks like Nowheresville. Nothing there. A thrift store, a tavern, a church. Turns out the name of the town is St. Ignatius. You think God's trying to tell me something here? I'm in St. Ignatius, but it doesn't dawn on me. I'm just tired. And I think, I'm going to go into that thrift store. Maybe I'll get a book. I can find a book, a novel, something to read back at the cabin. So I go into the bookstore. I can't see anything along those shelves of tattered little paperbacks. There's nothing. And then something catches my eye. It's about that thick. It's like a brick. And it says, the Parallel Bible. I have no idea what that means, Parallel Bible. What? I pull it out. Turns out it means it has parallel translations. So there would be King James and New English. Thank you. It had 4 different translations, which was why it was so thick, of every single verse. But I don't really need it. I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. That's odd. 4 translations. But then I open up the cover, the very first cover. This is not the Bible. It was one much bigger than this. But I open up the cover, and there, written in the margin, in little old lady's hand, that kind of wiggly, you can tell it's a little old lady, it says, Isaiah 54. So I buy it, and I walk outside. God has my attention now. And I'm walking to the pickup truck, and now I realize I'm in St. Ignatius. And it says Isaiah 54. And the mountains in the distance are called the Mission Mountains. I mean, it's all like, this is a moment where God is talking to me. And I get inside the pickup truck, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm listening. And just as I say that, a little white index card falls out of the Bible onto my lap. And the index card has 4 scripture notes on it. Just the notation, Matthew 5:25, Luke something something, Romans something. I just told God, you got my attention, and this falls out. I better look it up, and I've got this big old Bible in my lap. I mean, you're right there right now, do it. So I flipped open, and Matthew 5:25 is the verse that says, I don't remember the exact words, but it's, when you go to the magistrate, make peace with your adversary. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Is it ringing a bell? I think I might actually have it written down. Here it is. Matthew 5:25. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. That's what it says. It could not even be more specific. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. It's like time stopped for a second. I didn't even know if I wanted to look up the next one, which was Luke 12:58. But I did. And Luke 12:58 says, as you are going with your adversary to the magistrate, try hard to be reconciled to him. Oh. It's like you're looking around. I mean, He knows everything we're doing and thinking. He knows I've been tossing and turning, saying, that's not fair, I'll fight. That makes me want to up the ante. I think I'll go after. And it was just right there. The next one. If thine enemy hunger, feed him. I don't even know if I want to turn to the 4th one. The 4th one said, do good to those who hate you. I surrendered again. And I flew back to LA. You could have knocked the divorce lawyer off her chair when I told her, I don't want anything. Hattie, you were married 17 years. You get alimony. I don't want anything. Hattie, you can go after half the business. I don't want anything. Can we just settle? You can't settle. They haven't said what they're worth. We need to go. Can we just settle? Can we just... It's hard to convince somebody out there that we are living by a higher calling. I just don't want anything. Because God is my husband. He will lead me to green pastures. My cup will and does runneth over. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you, Pastor, for having me.